Okay, so as a note, just we tried to make it not sound as it's really hard. Yeah. Wow. Okay, so look around you. Who's sitting in your row? Your friends? Oh, I wouldn't know if they're your friends. But where I'm sitting, I can see long stripes of grey and a few dots of white everywhere. So, but these friends you're sitting with have been your friends for a long time. Gender inequality has been ingrained within us from a young age, and as an ancient tradition, men have always been given positions of more power and authority than women in society. Back in primary school, did you have more friends of the same gender or of the opposite gender? Generally, most of us had friends of the same gender because we all believed in a group of mystical organisms called cooties. It's not true, right? We just have syphilis, HIV, AIDS, whatever. Yes, but now we know there's something called STIs. But there's simply too much unfathomable difference between us that makes gender equality seem as close as Pluto. But by all means, we don't think there's anything wrong in giving women the same rights as men, and men the same rights as women. There are simply too many examples of gender inequalities for us to go through within 5 minutes. So we'll do our best to convey our opinions to you. We'll try to keep our relevance to situations that apply in Australia. And we're going to show you that despite all these steps forward for gender equality, it still runs through society. Okay, so cinema. Who has watched the last Harry Potter movie? Yeah, most of you? Well, gender inequality has pervaded into every corner of the film industry. In Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2, women are a little more well represented in the cast, with 34 out of 90 cast members recognized in the first role of the credits being women. In a survey conducted involving the top 100 grossing movies of 2009, such as Transformers 2, Harry Potter 6, and New Moon, only 32.8% of the 4,342 speaking roles were female. However, the gender of the director and the screenwriters seems to have a direct influence on the genders of the characters in the film. In the movies directed by women, 47.7% of the characters are female, whereas in the movies directed by men, less than 30% of the characters are female.
A quick point. Does anyone know what the difference between gender and sex is? Anyone? Take that as a no. Okay. The answer is simple. Sex refers to biological differences, whereas gender describes characteristics that a society/culture deems male or female. But even the physical differences between our sexes venture into the territory of gender roles and expectations, such as expecting the male in a heterosexual relationship to be physically/mentally strong. And when we have male-female toilets, if we were to truly treat each other's genders equally, we would have unisex toilets, but we don't. Right, that in the word gender points out that everything can be split into male or female qualities. Breaking down gender inequality would mean to break down the term gender itself.
A large part of gender inequalities are gender expectations. Our behavior is sometimes influenced by expectations associated with whether we are male or female. As a gender expectation, men are supposed to act manly. The definition of which of is having or denoting these qualities traditionally associated with men, such as courage and strength. These expectations create gender roles. Gender roles, such as being a real man or a girly girl, only help to widen the gaps of gender inequality. Separating behaviors, such as masculine and feminine, separates equality between genders.
There is so much social stigma that surrounds women, those specifically involving motherhood and marriage. As a woman ages, society expects them to become married and eventually bear children. I know, you. This social stigma pressures many of them to enter situations that they can't fully comprehend. After giving birth, most women are found in between the commitment to career and child. It's almost impossible to satisfy both. And those that choose to work full-time and choose to send their children to daycare are seen as bad mothers. But in this economic climate, most families can do with a second source of income. The choice of not having a child or being married may seem simple, but watching other people get married and bear children make it awfully hard not to want to have. It's like putting a vegan in a steakhouse. People are too eager and jump to the conclusion that gender inequality only applies to women. There are lots of things that men have to conform to, just as much as women. For example, it's expected of men, just by society, that they carry out tasks that require hard manual labor, pay for a dinner date, be tall and muscular, take control of difficult situations, and most importantly, they must be rich and treat females respectfully. Really, the problem is that there are some less than stellar examples of feminists who want all the advantages that the male gender has, which is all good. But then, within a heartbeat, they'll take advantage of the gender roles of men. In a gender equal world, does chivalry go both ways? In fact, another point that is often overlooked is domestic violence. Why does Australia say no to violence against women? Why not no to violence altogether? Just because there are more recorded cases of females as victims of domestic assault than to men does not mean that it's not just as likely. Why is it more acceptable for a man to be slapped by a woman, but when a man slaps a woman, it's labeled as domestic violence, the man himself called terms such as girl basher?
Gender equality is everywhere throughout the workforce. In August 2010, the pay gap for Australia was approximately 16.9%. This means that a $100,000 paid job for a male would only pay $83,100 for a female. That's $16,900 to buy 10 MacBook Pros. I don't know why you need 10. But 24 iPhone 4Ss or 23,472 apples at Coles for $3.98 a kid. Around 64 years. In more realistic terms, it could supply a family of 4 with food to last a year. Provided, of course, you don't have expensive tastes and eat wagyu beef every day. But in all seriousness, this is a huge difference. And generally, the reason for it is the employee being female. Females are seen as less useful in the workplace, mainly due to the fact that they are liable to get pregnant. Pregnancy would mean that the female worker would have to spend over half a year away from work on paid leave, which makes the company lose money and would be seen as less productive by the employer. After giving birth, the mother, of course, would not return straight to work. They could only work perhaps part-time, and even so, they wouldn't be able to work at all for the first few months, maybe. Afterwards, there is the choice of daycare or going back to full-time employment. And full-time employment doesn't even guarantee returning to the same job you had or receiving the same pay.
On the other hand, I'm going to admit there are a few jobs, by a few I mean like one that I can really think of, but I think the one that I can think of would be frontline soldiers. Yes, from this year, women can serve as frontline soldiers providing that they meet physical, mental, etc., requirements, but they're not easy requirements. The requirements are like 70 full sit-ups, 40 push-ups, 50 meters swim in camouflage clothes, tread water for 2 minutes, run 2.4 kilometers within 11 minutes. And it doesn't stop there, of course. You have to traverse an obstacle course and come back within 70 seconds in patrol gear carrying approximately 20 kilograms. Then a 15-kilometer march with about 40 kilograms of equipment in under 2 hours and 45 minutes. It's not easy for most guys to do that, and women are biologically, okay, this is really not easy to say, but they're biologically weaker than men in design, and it's harder for them. Physically speaking, women are weaker than men in general and having less muscle and bone mass, so it makes it a really hard job for them to apply for.
And gender inequalities are deeply ingrained within us. From the example at the beginning of our speech, guys and girls wear different school uniforms, and of course we take this for granted. I mean, when was the last time you heard of a school that had a unisex uniform? Yeah, I didn't think so either. But for the most part, women can do most of the things that men can do, and vice versa. It's just not as well accepted yet. But the differences between the two genders are too big and at too fundamental level to be able to be changed. No, not in our lifetimes at least. But of course, the bottom line is, can gender equality be changed? Inequality. It could possibly change. But we require collective action from society. Here at RUS, gender inequality may not be as evident, but this is because we consciously partake in activities promoting gender equality, and thus we have a high level of awareness. But RUS isn't the whole world.
But we're not going to say that this is the be-all and end-all, all you women's going to be treated badly for the rest of your lives. I hope that doesn't happen, really, sincerely. But RUS is a small world. We're nice people, but we're all pretty big and bad outside. And we all need to send our ideas across, transmit them. How let other people understand how this works, how that gender inequality should be abolished. within time, of course, and that there is hope out there. So.